Assalamualaikum guys. We're just waiting for Ustadha Lena to hop on. Okay, I see Ustadha Lena. I'm just waiting for her to request to go live, inshallah. Okay, I think. Assalamualaikum everybody. Assalamualaikum.
Assalam.
So much for the test run.
I know.
How are you doing?
Good, alhamdulillah. You?
I'm doing good.
Good.
So, assalamualaikum and welcome. Welcome everybody to our 5th session of Diseases of the Heart and Their Cures. And let's just go ahead and get started. So today we have special guest Ustadha Lena Tleib. So Lena is an active member of our local community, serving with numerous organizations like Moss Foundation, Orland Park, Makkah Center, and Mass, just to name a few. Currently, she's a regional development specialist at the Zakat Foundation and has contributed immensely to many humanitarian efforts. Lena has also led various halakas and programs for the youth and Muslim women since 2001. So I actually met Lena like a couple of months ago virtually, and mashallah, like she does so much amazing work through Zakat Foundation. So make sure you follow her work and support Zakat Foundation. So today, Sister Lena is going to talk about anger, a topic that I'm sure a lot of us struggle with. So whenever you're ready, Sister Lena, you can go ahead and get started. So I'm going to hop back on after you're done with your talk, inshallah.
All right, so alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, wa ala alihi ajma'in. So when I first the topic that was given, I was kind of interested to giving it because anger is a topic that we're talking about, and sometimes we kind of like a or judgment, or we kind of like udlum, like we express somebody by thinking they lose their cool, or if they feel anger, then they have something, or they're I'm not sure if does anybody hear side noises, or it's talking? All right, so let's continue on. So I think that what I wanted to start with is that I wanted to make that we understand that there is an emotion, and as humans, we feel angry sometimes. Obviously, if somebody offends us, he talks about us, expresses us wrong, being angry is, it's okay sometimes in certain occasions. Even when somebody, like, say for example, even in Islam, when somebody bashes the Prophet Muhammad or speaks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a nasty way, obviously we actually feel hurt and offended, and we may express that anger. So we want to acknowledge that anger is an emotion. As humans, we're going to feel angry sometimes in certain occasions. And yes, sometimes it's justified. It really is justified. But in the Quran, when you listen to about anger, you hear about ghadab, anger is only justified when it comes for subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. So the word ghadab in the Quran is pretty much entirely used for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where you hear like how somebody can earn Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath, or how somebody can upset Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or doing specific things will bring about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's anger. So the only time though besides that is mentioned 2 times referring to Musa alayhi salam, but the rest of the time it's all pertaining to and used for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we're talking about ghadab. Now ghadab though is a common Arabic word. It's a common Arabic word used for anger or angry. And when we dive into it a little bit more, you're going to see different aspects of it. So today I'm going to break down about 2 of them. And we're going to talk about ghaid, and we're going to talk about ghadab, and there's even other words like sakhat, but we're going to stick to ghaid and ghadab. And the reason why I'm going to use this and explain this first, I'm going to kind of use, before I go into the hadith about anger and the dangers of it and kind of what to do when you cool off, how to cool off, is I want to also mention the times where anger is justified. And there's going to be times, there's stories I'll share through the Quran or through the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad that was expressed, and there was no verses that came to kind of like speak down about it, or hold them accountable to what they were saying. So when we're talking about ghaid, it's used for believers or disbelievers. It's used for people that don't even like Muslims. Ghaid is internal. So this is it's anger, but it's not shown. It's hidden. It's internal. You're not showing it. And this is a state where some people, where they feel angry about something or something in their bodies, but they actually look totally calm. They look totally calm, cool, and collected. They don't show you that they're angry at all. They may even go the extra step to smiling and greeting you and saying salamu alaikum to you and being normal, even asking you how your day is. And that is not necessarily a hypocritical, kind of like attitude, but they may not even stand you. So they may even show that they're calm, cool, collected. They're not angry. They're not upset. But internally, it's completely different. And sometimes you think of it like a hypocritical attitude, but it could be just people going about their day, going shopping, meeting friends, going to work. But you don't know inside what they're going through or what's brewing in there. And a lot of things can be going on. And that's why sometimes you get surprised with people's behaviors or how they all automatically erupt and they get upset and they lash out, because we don't know what's going on in their mind. Okay, now, and we all hear crazy stories like this of the person that was a quiet person in class, yet one day just brings a machine gun and starts shooting the student body and the staff. And we don't have to necessarily go to that extreme, obviously, but there's individuals in our families, even ourselves. I would say, like, I have Arab blood, so I have that tendency to get kind of feisty sometimes. But of course, it doesn't mean that we have to be that extreme, that we go out and we go start hurting people or doing certain things that's in a dramatic way. But even individuals in our family, sometimes there is somebody with that all of a sudden just goes nuts, right? They actually are quiet, they don't say anything, then all of a sudden they just lash out at you. And subhanAllah, it's because internally it's ghaib, they're angry about something, and it just keeps brewing, just boom, it just comes out. And that's something we have to pay attention to, because when ghaib it's internal and it's not expressed, and it finally is expressed and released, that's ghadab. That's the difference between ghaid and ghadab, is you're suppressing it and then you're expressing it. Okay, now, but if it's still on the if it's still in the inside, then it's ghaid. It's a feeling, it's an emotion. So I just want you to understand that if you feel angry and you're suppressing the anger and you're trying to be patient, but there's a reason why we shouldn't suppress necessarily our anger without communicating it in a healthy way, what we like, what we dislike, what we want and what we don't want. So it has a lot to do with communication, but sometimes we just tend to say, you know what, I don't want to even explain it, I'm just going to suppress it. But we then have to be worried about, if we suppress it long enough, will we then go into expressing it, which this is what we want to steer away from. So with that being explained, the difference between ghaib and ghadab, I want to start off with a couple stories. I want to start off with a story from the companions, from the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, with the companions, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala them with mercy. Now we know that for the most part, the companions, they kind of like embraced themselves always. They listened to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ always. And they withstood a lot of headache, a lot of drama, a lot of ridicule. They were insulted publicly. They were also, they witnessed the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, insulted publicly. And we know that they loved him so much that they would actually give up their lives for him. So that's hurting them. They were taken out of their homes. They were cursed at. I want you to kind of imagine their situation, how they would feel and how you would feel if you actually felt this, if you were going through this experience. So they actually tried to kill them. They've gone through different wars and multiple wars with them. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ even taught them how to engage with the enemy in the ethics of war. And even in that particular situation, they are not supposed to go overboard with their anger, okay? And they're supposed to deal with them patiently. And you know that Ghaid was definitely put to the test with the companions, because you could imagine with all that going on, they are human and they're going to feel anger and they're going to be angry at what's happening. But they were suppressing it. So that was Ghaid, right? And I mean, they got to release sometimes, obviously. It's like, you know, it's somebody when you're in the midst of having certain issues with somebody, there was certain times where they were able to release some of that anger. Obviously, in the Battle of Badr, they released some at the Battle of Uhud. They released some at Ahzab. But by the time they got to Hudaybiyah and the treaty, you can only imagine how frustrated they were. You know, imagine how frustrated they were being put through all of these different things. So let me tell you a little bit more about their struggle in Hudaybiyah and the treaty and what they had to go through and what was asked of them at the end. And you can see like why they were so upset, where they went from that Ghaid to Ghadab. Now, this path that they took, they were afraid to being attacked, right, by the Meccans, and they were on their way to Hajj. They wanted to go to Hajj, and they had no weapons, and pretty much Hudaybiyah was really like a no man's land. It wasn't a land that people traveled through. Animals even didn't travel through it because it was an abandoned field. And the way they get there was actually through burning rocks on the floor. So it wasn't a path for people to take or animals even to take. Now, that is the path they took because why? They were afraid to being attacked and bombarded on their way to Hajj from the Muslims, which were actually on the attack, waiting for the Muslims as they were going to Hajj. Now, this in itself was really upsetting and self-raging. Why? Because even the Meccans had like this treaty where they wouldn't attack or hurt anyone. It didn't matter if they were idol worshippers or they came to Hajj to worship in any way. They would not attack somebody if they are coming with the purpose of worship. Now, they then broke their own constitution and they tried to attack the Muslims. They sent actually Khalid ibn Walid before he became Muslim, radiallahu anh. The Meccans sent him with a group of people to attack the Muslims. And you could understand that you're going to just do one thing. They don't want any trouble. They're following the constitution. Like, why are you keep closing one door after the other in their face? So you can imagine these people were frustrated. They were on a tough path and they were going through enough as it is and on the way to Hajj. So they had to take another route, and literally some narrations even talked about them physically, okay, that they were bleeding because of the jagged rocks and the thorns on the path, okay? And even the animals didn't cross that path, and it was cutting their legs and their shins as they were going. So you can just imagine when we're just taking a hike and everything is calm, cool, and collected, you have your water bottle and everything, and sometimes you still find yourself complaining. But these people are in a very aggressive journey, going for one purpose, and in that path they had so many different obstacles. So internally they were upset, they were angry. Now their shoes were even melting because of the burning rock. And as they were going on this path to get to Hudaybiyah, they didn't get there yet. And that's and when they got there, and they even brought their own animals to slaughter, and they find out that they have to go back. After going back and forth, they can't do Hajj. They can't do Hajj. This is where they find out they can't do Hajj. They've already went this far, and they're told they got to go back. And not only that, they actually have to slaughter the animals that they brought with them and make sure that the animals are fed to the people of Mecca. Wow. So because that's what was supposed to happen with the meat, that was just like the rule and the tradition. So those people that kept us, that's what they're thinking. Those people that kept us from Hajj and are like literally wanting to attack us and kill us, are going to eat our animals. Like, they were so upset. They were so upset. And that's the first udhiyah. That was Eid al-Adha. And you are usually happy when we slaughtered. They were not. They were not at all. They were so upset that they slaughtered the animal, and they're not going to even eat from it. So this was Ghaid. So when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told them to shave their heads and take their ihram off and head back, actually that Ghaid turned into Ghadab. That's when Ghaid turned into Ghadab. That internal anger came out. Okay. And I'm not talking about it came out in a bad way, which we're going to discuss, but it came out, okay? And for the first time, the entirety of the companions, the people that are actually known, we hear and obey, right? They're known as Sami'na wa Ata'na, right? This is how the Quran even describes these beautiful companions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower them with mercy. The Prophet Muhammad tells them all what to do, and he expects them to just hear and obey, and they don't like it. They even express like how they felt. And subhanallah, at this point, even Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, who was the symbol of obedience and loyalty to the Prophet Muhammad sallam, hears Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu speaking out, doesn't stop him. Doesn't stop. And he's lashing out, and he's expressing himself. He's expressing his anger to the Prophet Muhammad sallam, and he got loud in front of the Prophet Muhammad sallam, in front of everybody, and everybody could see. Aren't we following the right religion? He's saying this to the Prophet Muhammad sallam. Aren't we on the right path? Aren't we the ones following the right religion? Wait, what do you mean? Just head back and just do all this and just let it be. Also, he told Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, told the Prophet Muhammad sallam, didn't you see a dream that we were coming here? Isn't that mean that we were supposed to come and we're safe to come? And then the Prophet Muhammad sallam calmly said, I never said it was this year, right? I never said it was this year, but he could have just said, well, if it wasn't this year, then we're going to do it here this year. So he did. Umar ibn Khattab, amongst many of the companions, were upset at what happened. But now keep in mind, when somebody raises their voice, now we know that that's a no-no, that's a big no-no, right? That we cannot raise our voice. The companions were told never to raise their voice in front of the Prophet Muhammad sallam, or to any of the prophets, and disobey the messengers, because that wasn't such a small thing. That was a big thing. It wasn't something small. And no ayat in the Quran were sent down to reprimand those companions for doing what they did and saying what they said. In fact, the ayat that came down to comment on what happened includes some of the greatest praises of those companions ever. Actually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compares them to a growing, maturing crop. Because they were growing and expressing at the end of Surah Al-Fatih. Okay, so this is where they were described by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a growing, maturing crop. Now, when we talk about this anger and lashing out and hiring their pitch of their voice in front of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, they're not bashing the Prophet. They're not bashing Allah. They're not going crazy. They're just expressing their anger. So there's nothing wrong with somebody that when they're angry in a good, positive way. I don't know how you can put anger and positive in the same sentence, but in a calm way, expressing yourself with clear communication without having to do the crazy stuff, the going out, losing your mind, saying bad words or just saying things in a mean way, having a healthy way of expressing what it is that is bothering you. So it's an amazing image why they were angry. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would, if it was wrong, they would have said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would or should have said not to get angry. You should just listen to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But they weren't disrespecting the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. By no means was that the intent to kind of lash out and express their feelings to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But in this case, they expressed their anger, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described it as a maturing, growing crop. And remember in the Battle of Uhud, when some of the companions decided to come down from the mountain and didn't obey the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, and then ayat did come down. Ayat came down to criticize them. But here, all disobeyed and no criticism. So all didn't just listen to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu after he told them just leave it and go. So subhanAllah, Allah didn't criticize them at that point because it was justified anger. Do you understand? And they didn't do anything crazy. They didn't have to get the paramedics and the firemen and the police and the smoke bombs and all that to control them. They were just communicating. They were communicating what they were feeling. And yeah, they may have asked questions and clarifications, but that was it. It wasn't like a brawl. It wasn't like all these people died. It wasn't like anger. You get what I'm saying? Like anger where no, it wasn't that at all. And that's why there's a difference between. Now this is Allah's way of telling us that there is some times where anger can become overwhelming and it is justified. Honestly, when somebody, we're going to talk about another aspect, another story soon, but when somebody slanders you, of course you're not going to be happy about it. You're not going to be calm, cool, and collected about it. Of course you're going to try to defend your reputation. You're going to be upset inside, like, why would somebody say something like that? It's normal. Okay, so there's times where anger is justified, and there's times where we have to act on it in a healthy way in order to fight for our rights or to do something that's just to do something that's actually right. So imagine the woman in Surah Al-Mujadala that came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, and she started raising her voice. My husband just told me I am like his mother. And just to get you kind of in the concept of this story, is that this woman came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu angry and ghadban, frustrated that her husband had just told her that I am like his mother, which means kind of in a way like a way of separation. And he doesn't look at her like his wife. He looks at her like his mother. So he's not going to be like attracted to her, come near her, kind of like staying away from her, even on the intimate aspect. So he would be with, this is what they used to do in Jahil times. So it's like giving divorce to your wife. And it really was a divorce because the guy got angry at his wife and said that he resembled his mom. She's like his mom, and he's going to treat her like his mom in the sense that he's not going to be attracted to her or come near her. Now, and that is not a nice thing to say to your partner, to your wife. And she actually came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, complaining to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, honestly, at that specific time, didn't know what to tell her, and he didn't have revelation to answer her question. So he remains silent. And he says, I don't know what to tell you. And here she gets angrier and angrier, because you can imagine you're like going to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ with a problem, with a concern, and she wants an answer. She wants a solution. And he didn't have one just yet. So she gets louder and louder with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And then Quran comes in Surah Al-Mujadala, which says Allah hears the call of the one complaining of her spouse that came to you, and she is complaining to Allah, and Allah is listening. Over here, Allah is not reprimanding her, upset with her, bashing her, telling her you cannot talk to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ like that. She was just angry, and not because she had a justified reason why she was angry, and she just wanted to find solution. She was not doing it out of disrespect. She didn't want to have no evil intent with the way she was speaking to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. She wanted a solution, which most people can't. I mean, we go to the Imam, we go to counselors, we go to confidants, and we go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a solution. And subhanAllah, when we are having these hardships, we do tend to be angry. So all along to both of your, so he wasn't actually angry with both of their dialect, but again, in the story and revelation, Allah didn't say, don't raise your voice to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Didn't say to her, be quiet, or don't speak. Or you just need to listen to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He didn't say any of those kind of phrases when revelation came down, because at that moment, that anger was justified. That anger was justified, and it was okay. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took her side, and he was on her side, because she was oppressed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those that are oppressed. And obviously when we're in those situations where we are oppressed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is listening, right? He's listening and he's watching, and he knows who's oppressive, who's being oppressive, and who's being oppressed. So when somebody is in a desperate situation and their anger gets the best of them, Allah is on their side. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those that are oppressed, those that are wronged. He's on their side. So those Sahaba were wronged in many ways for many, many years, and their anger was justified. And the same thing, she was wronged by her husband and was mistreated, right? And that was also justified. So as a matter, it was, and it just came out, and it came out in ways that never was imagined they would do, because they were always what? Smirna wa ta'na. You know, they were a people of hear and we obey. Okay, so that was definitely different for them to speak out what they were feeling. As a matter of fact, if it hadn't been anyone else, they would have been like in a riot at Hudaybiyah, like I said. So it just matters. They didn't go crazy with the reaction of anger. It was more out of justified, and they had a proper way of dealing with it. So the fact that they didn't obey and they didn't take their ihram off at the first time Prophet informed them and commanded them to do that is pretty amazing. They actually did a good job with keeping their calm, keeping their cool. Okay. Now, they were calmingly disobeying, just expressing their anger, and one or two of them spoke out, and that's just incredible that they all didn't rebel, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises it. And Allah didn't. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wasn't angry with them when they were doing it. Now, I want to share with you the time where Aisha, our mother, radiallahu anha, was accused of wrongdoing. Okay, and the entire city of Medina was talking about the scandal, was talking about the incident, was against Aisha radiallahu anha. But that didn't actually bother her as much. So we know it was happening before she even knew. By the time she knew, it was already spread. She got upset with it. She was sad, right? She was sad when she heard it. And obviously that took a toll a little bit on her relationship with Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, because he was waiting for revelation. He was, he was distant from her for a little bit. So even though she was really sick and sad, she cried so much that even her parents thought, she said, my parents thought my liver was going to tear open because of how much I cried. Can you just imagine somebody saying something like that about you? It's a big deal, and it really will affect somebody who is a genuinely good person, working hard for was the wife of the Prophet, was the daughter of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. It's just something that you just can't swallow, and you can't just ignore either, obviously. So for 2 straight days, she cried and cried and cried, and actually that's when her parents told her that they were afraid that her liver was going to tear open because of how much she cried. Now the Prophet Muhammad then what? Came over to her, sat next to her, and keep in mind he hadn't sat next to her in a while. She was accused of fornicating. So if you have any, he said, this is what he says to her, if you mistake or if you did anything wrong, seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is what he's saying. He's saying 2 things, one of which, if you did anything wrong or made a mistake, forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you are innocent, Allah will prove your innocence. Okay? SubhanAllah, like, she went nuts when the Prophet Muhammad said something like that to her. So basically the Prophet Muhammad said 2 things to his wife. If you did wrong, seek forgiveness from Allah. And if you didn't, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to prove your innocence. Right? But the fact that it is her husband saying if, then she changed. She said, what do you mean if? Like, she was even like upset that her husband was even thinking that this may be true. And so she said, what do you mean if? Are you doubting me? Then she even said that her tears dried up. I wasn't crying anymore. And that sadness then became what? Ghadab. She was angry. And when it converted into anger, she turned to her mother and she turned to her father. And she told them, can you answer to what he just said? The Prophet Muhammad, her husband, just told her these 2. She went from being sad to being angry. And she turns to her parents and say, answer him. Like, literally answer him. And then they say, the mom says, I swear, the father and the mom say, I swear I don't know what to tell you. The father responds the same way. And look at who's in front of her, you guys. 3 very important people. Obviously, the Prophet Muhammad, right? Also, her spouse, her father, and her mother. And we know that we're not even supposed to say oof to the parents. We're not supposed to show them any negative gesture, right, to our parents. And then the Prophet Muhammad, not talking loud to the Prophet or hiring their voices to the Prophet Muhammad. Okay? So the 3 people who deserve the most respect here, the Prophet Muhammad, the mother, and the father. Then she responds, I can't believe with what I'm hearing. Like, she's so upset that she's just like, it's kind of like me and you. Somebody accuses us of something, and they're actually very close to us, and assuming that it could be true, it could be not, it could be false. But we're really angry inside because, like, what do you mean you're doubting me, right? What do you mean? So it's like, it makes you very upset that the person you know, you love, you trust, that you think knows you, like, inside out, is over here doubting you. Okay? So then she responds, I can't believe with what I'm hearing. I can't describe you people. And she starts to yell at them, all 3. And she even quotes the Quran. Okay? She quotes the Quran and compares them to who? The brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam. And she said, the only thing I can say is what Yaqub alayhi salam said to his sons. The thing I can do is find beauty in peace because Allah is the only one who can help you, right? When Yaqub always mentioned that beautiful patience, that he turned to Allah, he on Allah, and he was patient with whatever it is that he was giving us. So it's like, imagine you feeling that down, and she has the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and she has who? Her father and her mother in front of her, and she compares them to the brothers of Yusuf ﷺ, which we know what the brothers of Yusuf ﷺ did to Yusuf, and they tried to do to Yusuf. So can you imagine what she was what she is describing them as? It was very serious. It wasn't something small. It was a big deal to her, but it was also a reaction from her as well. Then she is done talking and turned back and laid on her bed, and she pretty much said, "I'm done talking to you guys," and and she just turned around. She turned her back to them. So turning her back to the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, her parents, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and her parents. Then after that, 10 ayat came in Surah Nur, and absolutely none of those 10 ayat, criticized our mother Aisha radiallahu anha for speaking the way she spoke. It didn't criticize her at all. Why? There are cases in which anger is justified. Can you imagine if she just stayed calm and collected, quiet? What do some people consider silence? Approval. Some people consider silence approval. So if she stayed quiet and didn't get bothered, what kind of person would she be? Obviously, a normal, sincere person would get upset and angry when the closest people to them is over here believing a lie and a slander against them. Okay, so that's normal. That's normal feeling, and that was completely justified. But don't you see that this, don't use this to justify your anger. Like some people, they say, I heard these stories, I'm going to justify my anger. If I have something to say, I'm going to say what I want to say when I want to say it. No. There's etiquette in the way we express ourselves and how we behave. Obviously, we shouldn't be expressing our anger with a bad attitude, with vulgar language, really getting like crazy angry where we even break things, hurt things. We're not supposed to do that. That's not how we're supposed to express our anger. And even when you're right and you're angry and you act like that, you become wrong. Okay? That's the reality of things. Your anger should never reach a point where it hurts someone verbally, mentally, physically. Okay? It shouldn't hurt them that way. You have to find a way to compose yourself to communicating in a healthy way what it is that is angry and making you angry. Okay? So there's no backlash. The last example before we go into some of these hadith is the example of Yusuf alayhi salam. The example of Yusuf alayhi salam when the brothers came for food the second time, when they came for ration. When the brothers were confronted about the charges of their brother Benjamin, remember who did that whole ordeal where he stole the tablet, right? And Yusuf alayhi salam had a whole plan to keep Benjamin by him. And he was and brothers were confronted about the charges, and his own brothers were standing in front of Yusuf alayhi salam, right? They were standing in front of Yusuf alayhi salam and didn't even know it. And they said, he sold, way back when he used to have a brother who used to steal. And they're talking about Yusuf alayhi salam, and Yusuf alayhi salam is right in front of them. Can you believe that he had to suppress his anger at that point because they're talking about him being king when he wasn't. So Yusuf alayhi salam at that point was the minister, and now he can actually do whatever he wants with them, right? He can imprison them, he can kill them, he can do whatever he wants, he can them, but he didn't do that. So instead of standing in front of his brothers lying, how angry would you be if that happened to you? Or how and by the way, when all the scenarios happened to Yusuf alayhi salam throughout the whole surah, you never hear that he was the tafsir, that he was upset with what happened to him. And he went through so much, right? He got upset at just this time. So he has a lot of reasons to be angry with his brothers. Literally, they prevented him from having a father. through growing up. He was enslaved. He was imprisoned. He was so many different things came across his path. For many years of his life were affected because of the ill doings of his brothers. And yet, after all that, they're coming for aid. They're standing in front of him when they don't even know they're standing in front of him, and they still are talking bad. But the Quran doesn't say anything about him being angry until that moment that Yusuf contained all of those feelings that he had against them and swallowed them. He did the ghaib. He did the ghaib, subhanAllah. In his position, he could have done anything else, right? He could have actually hurt them, imprisoned them. He could have even killed them. But he didn't, because he had the power to, but he didn't. So he surpassed, so he kept that anger inside. Now, what are we learning now? We are learning that Yusuf alayhi salam was really important, and the story of Yusuf alayhi salam was really important for the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, because he was in a great position of oppression, and he was very helpless. He was in a helpless situation. The Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, he was under oppression. Khadija radiallahu anha passed away. Abu Talib passed away. He had no shelter or protection for the Muslims. He was going through a lot, and things were actually looking good for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's when Surah Yusuf was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's in that context to give the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam hope, to give him hope that, oh, see, look at Yusuf alayhi salam went through all these different ordeals and different hardships, and look where he ended up. Okay, and Allah gave Surah Yusuf to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ for that hope, to give him that hope. And it's in Surah Yusuf that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying you and your followers have many reasons to be angry. You do. He's giving them that floor to understand that He understands they're angry. He understands there's many reasons why they should be angry. But a time is going to come where you will be in the position to take revenge. And then you should exercise what Yusuf alayhi salam is going to exercise. So even we know that at the end of the tafsir of Surah Yusuf and the end of the chapter of Joseph, Yusuf alayhi salam, you will see that he forgave his brother. He didn't throw it in their face. He said, Allah will forgive you because, why? Because He forgave. He forgave. So most of the time when we're wrong, we have thoughts of revenge. We automatically, start to think, one day I'm going to get that person back. And when I get a chance, they're going to see what I can do. And I'm going to do this and this and this, and I'm going to be driven. Some people are driven by revenge. When we're wronged, we're driven by revenge. But we can't do that. We're going to only corrupt ourselves when we do that. So get that kind of out of your mind completely. And that's not worth it at all, because you end up losing yourself. Now, why shouldn't you want revenge? Ghaib is you are hurt, and it is inside of you, but ghadab is no good. Ghadab, when you actually express it, and ghadab sometimes is not expressed in a calm, cool, collective way. Most of the time, it's like you really outdo yourself with anger. So ghadab means you want to act it out, and you want to inflict harm. By the way, if you want justice, no problem. Whoever was done wrong and they want to seek revenge, you can't make a case against them, obviously. If somebody does something wrong to you and you want revenge in a fair, sincere way, nothing to go extreme, nothing to go above and beyond what they did to you, then there's no case against them. But here, where I want you to hear the words of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He says, be very careful about ghadab. He says, be very careful about ghadab, and anger that lashes out, that makes you ugly, that makes you sick. It actually makes you sick when you're that angry and you do this. It actually makes you ugly and it makes you sick. He describes it like a burning lump of coal inside of you that burns inside the heart of the son of Adam. So he's over here describing what anger is, what ghadab is. It's like a lump of burning coal inside your heart of the son of Adam. The words are profound, deep words from our beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, where it says, what is inside our hearts? Ask yourself, what is inside our hearts, you guys? Inside our hearts is gratitude. Inside our hearts should be patience. Inside our hearts should be iman. Okay? Inside are all the good things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants inside any human being. He wants good things in this heart. Now, imagine you have those good things and you have this lump of burning coal in that heart as well. Okay? If you have that lump burning inside your heart, what's happening then to all those good things? They're burning away. Okay? That's the dangers of ghadab. And that's the dangers of seeking revenge. And that's the dangers because it makes you ugly and it makes you sick and it burns away all the other good things around it. Okay? So that's why it's important to stay away from it. They are burning away, burning all by anger. And that's how, subhanAllah, it affects you. It affects you big time. So he said, watch out for anger. It could burn everything else down. It'll try everything. It'll tear every single thing apart. Now, as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ describes, haven't you seen the redness of his eyes? Over here, he's describing when a person gets angry, the way their face looks. It's different. It's completely different. Haven't you seen what happens to his face that is coming out from his heart onto his face? Anger is not something we can hide, and when we express it, it's ugly. It's just really ugly, and there's no other way of saying it. So anger is manifested, and you can see it firsthand in their face through their eyes. As I conclude, I want to share why this is so scary. Though anger is justified in some situations, I'm not saying all situations, and you have to be mindful of which situations are actually justified. Why living a life of anger is so scary? We shouldn't be angry, we shouldn't be bitter, we shouldn't seek revenge because it's scary. For every disease of the heart, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes some kind of cure. Okay, I want you to just pay attention to this last part. For every single disease of the heart, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes some kind of cure. But do you understand that what starts it off? By the way, the only disease Allah does not give a cure for is hasad. Hasad is jealousy. And anger, yes, jealousy, no. And why am I bringing jealousy in this concept of anger? Even though we are not talking about jealousy today, I want to mention jealousy because jealousy, if it is not contained, okay, if we do not contain jealousy, it turns into anger. It turns into anger, and that is what happened with Iblis. You guys, that's what happened with Iblis. He was so jealous that it turned into anger, and he couldn't control himself. He couldn't control himself. His jealousy turned into anger. That is what happened with also Bani Israel, with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Their jealousy of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ turned into anger. Their jealousy turned into anger. And with that jealousy turned into anger, they were doomed. Because once anger turns into jealousy and vice versa, there's no going back. It's gone too far. Now, why don't you think Shaitan doesn't make the tawbah? Why would Shaitan not make tawbah if the door of forgiveness is always open to everybody, right? It's always open to every single person, every single creation. That door of forgiveness is always open. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it's not closed, right? He was actually he knows Islam and he knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better than me and you. He actually witnessed it. He was in the heavens. He knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better than any of us. He also was in the company of Allah. He was in the company of the angels. He actually seen them. It wasn't like us, we don't see them, we just believe in them. He actually seen them. And he was in their company. And the company of the prophets, he's been exposed to the truth more than anyone else has ever been exposed to the truth, subhanAllah. But why won't he just make tawbah and seek forgiveness? Because when jealousy turned to anger, there was no turning back. You know, we even learn about jealousy in Surah Yusuf, where it talks about even people that have faith, people that are, you know, good, but when they actually can't contain that jealousy, jealousy is an attribute that makes a rational person irrational. And what happens when a person turns irrational and then angry, guess what? They don't see anything in front of them. That's why they will end up destroying themselves and everything in their path. That's why they're doomed, and that's why they never can go back from it. And if there is somebody that is jealous of you and has turned that into anger against you, I want you to know one thing. The only thing you can do is ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you and to protect you from their anger and their jealousy and their evil plot. You cannot try to outdo them, okay? Because they're irrational. They're not going to think straight. You know, sometimes people we know, they're faithful and stuff, they do something wrong, and they do it out of anger or jealousy, and sometimes we're like, I can't believe that person did that. Don't they do this? Don't they do that? Don't they know better? Don't they do this and another thing? Yeah, but guess what? It makes rational people irrational. And that's why you can't even battle with those person. You can't even talk to those person. You can't even lower yourself to their standards. You have to ask the one and the only that can protect you and knows everything they plan to protect you from their plan. Okay? Now, don't become the person who is angry out of jealousy. You have people angry at you out of jealousy or whatever their efforts are. Just ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shield you from them. So, I know I can go on and on, but I think my time is up. But I just want to end in a dua. You know, the Prophet Muhammad did advise him. And he did. He repeated, "La taghdab." Don't be. So try your best to not express, you know, or wait for so bad that it becomes ghadab. Make sure that you, even if you are and you're bottling, figure out a healthy way to communicate what's going on before you actually erupt like a volcano. Okay? And I want to remind you that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "Verily, anger corrupts the man just as bitter oils honey." You guys know that anger is only going to destroy all the goodness that you have. So try your best to really suppress that in a healthy way and always turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And before I close, you know, sometimes that if you suppress your anger or you don't react, that you're kind of, excuse my language, stupid or weak. You're not. You're actually the opposite. Where the Prophet Muhammad said, "The strong man is not the one who rises." You know, we can get into fights and brawl, see who's the strongest, right? But he says the strong man, strong person, is in fact the one who can control himself at times of anger. You guys, it really takes a lot of strength to suppress that anger and not react that way, not to react that's displeasing to Allah, not to react to people, discourage, you know, or make the Prophet Muhammad. You guys, there's things you can do for angry. There's the last one I want to share is one, always seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to protect you from the whispers of shaitan. He will try to you so you can react. So always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you from the whispers of shaitan. And literally, I just want you to laugh at this. I know people that they'll be angry and somebody will tell them just "Istaidu billah, istaidu bin shaitan." They're like, "Get away from me, I don't want to hear about this." But the reality is you need people around you to tell you, calm down and chill out, think about it, process it, and then communicate it in a healthy, calm way. The last thing, other advice Prophet Muhammad forever angry was that when one of you becomes angry while standing, he should sit down. If the anger leads him well and good. Otherwise, he should lay down. So it's like changing positions and getting out of that circumstance. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to those people that anger. I ask Allah to forgive us for our anger was ever demonstrated the wrong way. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive any and all of our shortcomings amongst those that he protects and keeps us guided. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala alihi.
Ameen. Jazakallah. Ustadha Lena, that was such an amazing talk. And when the team and I were planning out the series, we were like, we need to have Ustadha Lena do the topic on anger. And that was so beautiful. And I feel like each story had such an impact and benefit of how we can all deal with our anger better moving forward. And I feel like for me personally, Surah Yusuf is my favorite surah. And whenever I feel the feelings of anger, I always try to refer to that surah. So Jazakallah again, like every story that you said was so beneficial. I'm sure everyone else has benefited too. And I can't wait to have you again. And inshallah, next time it's in person.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
I can't stop. I'm sick of this.
I know, seriously, it's like all the glitching and everything. So inshallah, we can be in person again. And thank you everyone for joining in. And next week is going to be our series finale of diseases of the heart and their cures. So tune in. And once again, Lena, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, bless for everything, all the amazing work you do with Zakat Foundation. And make sure to follow Lena Tleib on Facebook and Instagram to see everything that she does.
Thank you guys for having me. Pleasure and honor.
Thank you. All right, take care. Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome, salam.